Joe Biden took his message of unity a little too far, just a little too far, for me at least, during an interview with Lester Holt. Let's hear what the question is and what Biden had to say.
Have you considered, for the sake of national unity, selecting or nominating a Republican, someone who voted for President Trump?
Yes, and we still have a lot more appointments to make. I want this country to be united. The purpose of our administration is, once again, united. We can't keep this virulent political dialogue going. It has to end.
But why? But why? But why? This makes the Democratic Party, with the new infusion of never Trump Republicans, has already moved to the right. I don't understand this need to reach out. People who voted for Trump, some people might have voted for Trump in 2016 because maybe they wanted to take a chance. Maybe they realized that we needed a shock to the system. And even though Trump, in my opinion, was a disaster when he was campaigning, it was pretty clear he was gonna be a disaster as a president. They decided, no, we'll take a chance, we'll vote for him. But then after 4 years of one horrific policy after the next, dozens of migrants dying in cages, people going hungry during the pandemic and being completely abandoned by Donald Trump, more than 250,000 Americans dying during the pandemic, Donald Trump breaking all sorts of laws, including using congressionally appropriated funds as leverage to get Ukraine to announce a sham investigation into the Bidens. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. If someone votes for Trump after 4 years of that, why would you want them in your administration? Why? These are not reasonable people. These are not people who believe in our system of government. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in decency, the very thing that Joe Biden claims he wants to bring back to the United States. Why would you commit, or why would you even entertain the idea of putting a Trump supporter in your administration? I don't understand it. Anyway, maybe I'm going too far. Maybe it's unreasonable to think that it's a stupid idea to have a Trump supporter in your administration. I don't know, John, maybe you have a different perspective.
I think that it's important, after Donald Trump and the Republicans lost an election, that we understand their feelings. And more than that we give them all political power. I think that's what we should do. I think in the same way that when Donald Trump won, he spent years reaching out to the left and to Democrats. I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all. I mean, look, I do to some extent. There's a few different explanations. One, Biden's gonna Biden, and that's it. And he doesn't get who Trump is. He doesn't get who Trump supporters are. He fundamentally doesn't understand it. He thinks that we're still in the Reagan years, which were terrible, but in a different way. Maybe it's just Biden being Biden. One is it's a way to pay back the Lincoln Project, part of the Republican Party, maybe, except again.
No, they hate Trump.
No, I understand. No, I'm saying.
Sorry, I'm very fired up about this.
That's conflating some Republican like John Kasich. But the question was a Trump voter, someone who 2 weeks ago tried to stop you from being president, Joe Biden. Does Joe Biden know that he's the Joe Biden they were opposing? Maybe he's mixed it up with some other Biden. And the third explanation, I guess, is because some centrist Dems, not even elected ones, just regular centrist Dems out there in the country, they just love this stuff because they, like Biden, want to imagine that everything will go back to normal and everything will be great and we can go to brunch and all that.
I know, but normal before Trump was Republicans are obstructionists. They do not want to work with Obama. They will do anything and everything necessary to block his proposals or any vision he has during his administration. So even before Trump, the Republican Party has been slapping members of the Obama administration around. And Biden's like, oh yeah, no, people who are even worse than them. Sure, I would totally consider them being represented in some fashion in my administration. And then the question of progressives came up. And I'm grateful that Lester Holt asked this question. Let's hear what Biden had to say.
What about former rivals from your own party, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren? Have you talked to them about cabinet positions?
Well, I've talked to, look, as I said, we already have significant representation among progressives in our administration, but there's nothing really off the table. But one thing is really critical. Taking someone out of the Senate, taking someone out of the House, particularly a person of consequence, is a really difficult decision that have to be made. I have a very ambitious, very progressive agenda, and it's going to take really strong leaders in the House and Senate to get it done.
No, you don't. You don't. So far, the names that have been announced for Biden's cabinet, the nominees, are not these ambitious progressives. I have not seen ambitious progressive proposals from the Biden campaign. I was shocked to see that he did move a little to the left when it came to climate policy, but then that was immediately counteracted by some of the cabinet nominees that have been announced already. So I don't. There's one thing I do agree with him on in that answer. I do think it's important for Bernie to remain in the Senate. I think that it's better to have him serve as a check on the executive branch rather than be part of the executive branch, where I don't think that Biden is really gonna give him much influence anyway. But that's the only thing I agree with him on. When you look at all of the other names that have been mentioned, even the ones that progressives can stomach, that's pretty much it. Progressives can stomach them, but they're not individuals that progressives are like, oh yeah, hardcore leftists, where they're definitely gonna fight for the Green New Deal, they're gonna fight for canceling student loan debt. No, these are people who actually have worked with Biden and the Obama administration. You know, these are not new names, these are not new faces, these are typical moderate Democrats. And then in addition to those typical moderate Democrats, you have a list, a now growing list of individuals who have been very comfortable and financially tied with the fossil fuel industry. And I'll give you some specifics on that in just a minute. But John, I wanted to give you a chance to jump in.
Yeah, I wanna play devil's advocate. Before I play devil's advocate, let me ask you a question that I debated when I talked about this on the Damage Report. I, like you, agree with, like, I would prefer to have Bernie in the Senate. I also think that he knows better than me, so if he thinks he can get more done in the cabinet, I would defer to him. But Joe Biden says it's more important to have them in the Senate. Is that why he's not putting them on the cabinet? He's saying that that's the reason. Is that the reason?
Look, at this, like obviously at this point we're speculating. I don't know what he's thinking, but I will say this. If you compare the two videos that we've shown you for this story, when Lester Holt asks, would you consider a Trump voter in your cabinet? He answered real quick.
Yeah.
When it came to, have you spoken to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders about cabinet positions? Like he was struggling, like in the beginning.
Suddenly became one of those, well, look, here's the deal. It became that, like, no, that's not you being honest. That's you being Joe Biden, the politician, I think. Yeah. But devil's advocate, I think, look, when he says I have a bold progressive agenda, okay, obviously we think that's going way too far. But look, I think for Senate Republicans and some Senate Dems, is his climate plan more progressive than they're probably comfortable with? I think you could make the case, yes. I think some of his plans could be described more accurately as progressive than the people. When he says we already have a lot of progressive representation, like I genuinely want to play devil's advocate, and who? Like, who is he talking about when he says that?
Well, you know, there are TYT members who are writing in right now. You can become a TYT member by going to tyt.com/join. And they agree with you. So for instance, Cray Souffle writes in and says, what progressives are on your list of cabinet nominations, Joe? I must need new glasses. And then No More Trigonometry makes an excellent point. If you just go back in recent history and think about some of the commentary among centrist Democrats in regard to Bernie, this is what Trigonometry has to say. Once again, I have to point out the establishment told us nonstop about how Bernie isn't a real Democrat, but their golden boy Biden is literally talking about letting Trump supporters in his cabinet. Pathetic.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you. And Trump supporters aside, even if he just said that for the sake of unity or said it as a theoretical, some of the names that have been mentioned, some of the nominations already are problematic, even if they're not Trump supporters. So first off, he chose Representative Cedric Richmond from Louisiana to serve in his cabinet, and he would certainly have to communicate and serve as a liaison with climate activists. And that's an issue because he is heavily funded by the fossil fuel industry. He is the 5th Democrat who takes the most money, most donations from the fossil fuel industry. So there's a huge conflict of interest there. And then now there's another name being floated for his cabinet. Ernest Moniz is currently serving on the board of Southern Company, which is a utility company known for a great deal of pollution. And he's being considered as someone who's going to serve for the energy secretary under Biden. So what are you doing? Okay, so where are the progressives? And then you hear names like Janet Yellen, and Janet Yellen's done some great things, but she's also done some not so great things. I wouldn't consider her like some hardcore progressive, but she was someone that progressives were able to stomach. I think there's an important distinction there.
Yeah, like I guess maybe he has made some choices that he hasn't made public. Like, is he thinking about like Deb Haaland or something? Like, is it maybe he has some information that we don't know? Because otherwise, is he talking about John Kerry? Is he talking about Ron Klain? Like, we know that he defines progressive very differently than we do, obviously, but he's got to know that quote is going out to progressives who are going to interpret it the way progressives think of it. And he is not a self-identified progressive, or at least not the way we would define it again. I honestly don't know. Like, I'm genuinely trying to play devil's advocate, and I don't know who is on that list.
A few super chats related to this story. David Draper writes in and says, been watching for years, became a member after election day, TYT too strong. Ooh. Thank you so much. And everyone watching, you can also become a member by going to tyt.com/join. And Miss Loops writes in and says, so basically, Biden sounded more eager to recruit Republicans than progressives. I mean, just based on those 2 clips that we showed you, and you can go back, rewind and watch it, that appears to be the case. But we'll see what the final result of Biden's administration will be. And of course, we're gonna keep updating you guys on all of that as the story develops.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.